Hey there everyone, how's it going? And welcome back to the second episode of my podcast that doesn't really have a formal official name yet, but I've got an awesome guest on for this episode. His name is Brett. He's the owner and founder of Elevated Angles here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They offer aerial media services from construction progression to real estate to more creative options. You guys have probably seen him on Instagram, Elevated Angles. He's got awesome hyperlapses, awesome photos over on Instagram. So if you want to check him out, I'm going to give you an early plug there because he is definitely worth the follow. But the reason I had him on here is not because he's a good friend of mine. It's not because he also flies drones. Well, it kind of is because he flies drones, but it is because last year he got to fly his drone during the World Series. The Phillies went to the World Series, unfortunately lost, but he was able to pick up the Phillies as a client and fly his drone during the game, kind of. You'll learn more about his role in that whole entire thing as we kind of go through the episode, but he was able to fly his drone where nobody has been able to, at least legally. We know that there's a lot of people that like to fly their drones roguely over football games and over other baseball games, but he was given consent in order to do so, and that's what makes this story so awesome. So thank you so much again for tuning in here to this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoy, and definitely stay tuned for some more as I've got some awesome episodes in the works. Also, by the way, I'm kind of digging this up from the archives as we recorded this like before last Christmas. So this has been sitting on my hard drive for like 4 or 5 months, but now that baseball season is right around the corner, I wanted to upload it here as the World Series is becoming a little bit more prominent, and he got to fly his drone during the last World Series, and I can't wait to see what he gets to do with the Phillies this year during this baseball season. Okay, enough for me. Let's get into the episode. All right, so I did a big face reveal for you on Instagram.
Oh, I know. There's a lot of, yes.
So nobody knows what Elevated Angles looks like, Brett, until now.
Yeah.
So the big reason I wanted to have him on the channel is because you flew during the World Series.
I did.
Legally.
Legally, all, rules, regulations followed, everything.
Up until this point, I don't think that there's been any drone flight over any sort of national sporting event or major sporting event that has been legal. I mean, you've seen that people like over the Cincinnati Bengals Stadium, right? Like all those illegal flights.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest reason why I wanted to sit down with you, because you went through the process of getting the approval. You went through the process of actually doing it. And again, I think that this is the first flight. So real quick, just about you. You've got a drone business here in the city, in Philadelphia. You pretty much service the whole East Coast, right?
Whole East Coast, pretty much, yeah.
So funny story about this picture behind us. This is actually the picture that made me find you on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah. This is one of the first pictures I saw from you. I was like, yo, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy actually takes some great photos.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I first linked up with you. But fast forward now, right? We've been talking for probably a little over a year. And I remember you were posting about flying the drone down at the World Series. You were like, if you see a drone, don't worry.
Yeah.
Because whenever
I just didn't want anybody like in the stadium and start being like, oh my God, there's a drone in there. And
where you guys were flying, you almost weren't able to see unless you're in the outfield.
If you were in the outfield.
Yeah. So I guess like how did it come to fruition? Like did the Phillies approach you? But also, by the way, this was during the World Series game. Which game? Game 5, right?
Game 5. The last one, because we were hoping that they clinched.
Yeah.
So we had scheduled, with these types of things, a lot of, scheduling and, permissions go into it. So it's like you need to lock in a day.
Yeah.
And then if you remember, what ended up happening was that first, I believe it was the first. Yeah, home game got rained out. Mm-hmm. So that pushed us back, it was a whole thing. So,
So it was game 5. It was like a Thursday night, whatever. Luckily, it wasn't the night that it got rained out. That would have been
It was not,
yeah. So they were playing against the Astros, probably my least favorite MLB baseball team ever. But did they approach you? Did you approach them? Like, how did it?
So I got to give a shout out to my employee, Brett Gross. He was really the one that got connected with it. He's my lead pilot. So for Elevated Angles, lead pilot, digital creative. But he reached out to them. He has some connections within the Phillies organization. And it was kind of like, hey, would you guys be interested in this? Let's see if we can get it done.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have an idea of what was then going to go into it, but I think it was worth it.
What was like your restrictions during the flight? Like, were you able to fly? How high? Like, what did they tell you?
So pretty much we had an area roped off. If you saw that photo,
Yes, I passed by you guys.
Oh yeah. You pass on it. So we had an area roped off. It was literally right behind home plate.
Yeah.
So our flight, so going into it, we had to give Major League Baseball
You know what? That's probably a good spot to start.
better, yeah.
Like where, how did you get the permission? Who did you have to talk to? Who said yes? Like, I feel like you'd have to have Biden himself, the president himself, sign a waiver like, yeah, you can fly over the game.
Well, yeah. So we had to get the Phillies' permission, obviously. That was, who we were talking to, so that was fine.
Yeah.
We had to get Major League Baseball permission, who I didn't actually talk to the Astros, but they got the Astros permission.
Okay.
And then going into that, obviously the FAA. So you have the whole, flying during an open, a sporting event.
Because there's the TFR.
Yeah, because there's a TFR around the stadium. So you almost have to like simultaneously get like the FAA has to be on the same page as the MLB, which has to be on the same page as the Phillies, which then has to be on the same page of the Philadelphia Police.
Yeah.
And then counterterrorism, and then the FBI. So, they kind of handled the whole like Philly, I guess you could call it like local like enforcement, which was like the Philly Police, the anti-terrorism, the FBI.
Yeah.
The Phillies handled that, which is really like, and then you have all the other stadiums. So like a lot of people don't realize when you're flying, at least in Philadelphia, for those of you that are watching this in Philly, when you fly, or if you want to fly down in the stadium parks, let's just call it, like it's a no-fly zone, and then at the same time as a no-fly zone, you actually need permission from the stadium.
Yeah.
So like if you were to go through the proper FAA channels and say like, hey, even on a non-game, let's just forget about a non-game. You go down there and the FAA approves, let's say 100 feet for you to fly in that area. You will get grounded by the stadium. They have drone detectors on every.
So I think they have an aeroscope system, because I remember back in college, I went down there because we were doing a project about the stadiums.
Okay.
And so I was like, let me go down and grab a drone shot. So I actually flew from like the northmost part of the stadiums just to be as far away from the airport as possible. I'm within 5 minutes. Golf cart pulls up and not able to fly. Yeah. So.
And that's what if I didn't know any, like if I was from out of town, I'd be like, well, the FAA gave me permit, like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, the stadium, you're taking off on their property. Like they control what, goes on there. So anyways, you then have to let all of there's like a stadium, I guess, director that, is for security around all of them. So everybody all I'm getting at is everybody has to be on the same page. So the Eagles and the Sixers all have
and
to.
The Flyers.
And the Flyers.
Just Wells Fargo Center.
The Wells Fargo Center, Lincoln Financial, and Citizens Bank Park. They all have, as long as, everybody's on the same page, and like what you end up doing is giving your drone serial number and you're whitelisted and all of that. But I guess the long story short of it is there are a ton of, especially so getting back to the World Series, it was dealing with the MLB, which was, I'd say, the most intensive, because your question about where could I fly and stuff like that kind of goes into dealing with the MLB. So in order to get this approved, like we had to give them a specific flight plan of like where exactly we're going to be.
Most of the flights I saw, you were basically over, I guess, behind like third and first base, just over the roof. Was that what they gave you?
So our flight plan was between if you were to be on home plate and you saw the two lights, the first two lights, we had the area in between that. So we could do anything in between and like really back towards the street. Other than that, though, it was
I was so surprised to see how close they had you take off, because that was a busy sidewalk.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're coned off and whatnot, but I would have thought they'd put you in like a parking lot a little bit further away.
You know what I mean? So there were some issues with like who owned the parking lots. Lincoln Financial owns certain lots. The Eagles do. The Sixers do.
Gotcha.
And, I'd rather not get into that.
Totally,
but,
yeah.
But in general, yes. Like my takeoff spot was like 15 feet from the actual entrance. So like, I think everybody knows when you're flying, I'd rather not be that close to the building.
I mean, how many people did you have passing by or like, what were you doing?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
ton.
Like so many people were like asking questions.
That's kind of like what my concern was going into it too, is like anytime you're flying in the city or doing a job, like whether it's a concert or something where there's a lot of people around, everybody's just fascinated with drones.
Totally.
So, whether it's they want to ask you questions about, how high it goes or how far it goes or how fast it goes, to them wanting to see what it looks like, and like sometimes I get frustrated and I try and keep it, take myself down a notch, but it's like you're trying to do a job. I mean, you're paid to, get professional cinematic video quality. Like the last thing that you want is having to deal with like 50 people walking up to you asking you 20 different questions. So it actually worked out a lot, because like right when the game started, there wasn't that many people outside. So it actually was a lot better than I anticipated, I would say, in terms of like the people walking around and asking questions. But yeah, leading up to the game, it was, it was a madhouse.
Yeah, probably. So when you were... like 7 or 8 different parties needed to consent to this.
Yeah.
Like,
so the FAA approves things, but like they won't approve a flight if the Eagles, let's just say, don't say it's okay.
So were they the last people to say yes? Were they like, we need to make sure all parties involved are okay, and then we'll give you the authorization? Or
no, they have to actually approve it first.
Gotcha.
Like, technically, you get the the airspace waiver.
Yeah.
And then once you get that airspace waiver, so for the FAA, this was 2 different waivers. You had the airspace waiver, since we're in the airspace, and then you had the sporting event.
Gotcha.
So what ended up happening was you get the airspace waiver approved first. And what happens is the Philly airport are really tight with everybody at the stadium. So they make a phone call and they say, hey, do you know this is going on? They say yes or no, and then the FAA is like, okay, this is approved or whatever. So once you get that airspace approval, then I actually never had to do this, so it was a learning experience for me.
And like I said in the beginning, I think this is the first time it's been done around a like
from what I understand.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
There's been rogue drone pilots, and of course they get slammed by the FAA, but in your case, it was all legal, which is awesome.
Yeah, which is awesome. But what you had to then do is take that airspace waiver, and there's a whole nother portal. I didn't even know this.
Really?
There's a whole nother portal for like different types of waivers.
Yeah.
So like you have the FAA drone zone, which when you go in there and get approvals for things, so like you have your waivers. I've had over 50 waivers approved, but all of mine were airspace, besides a night when we couldn't fly at night. You would then, when you click, you're gonna, request a waiver, it comes up like airspace or operational. And that's where I was thinking like, I'd have to just go in there and hit operational waiver, and that's where the sporting event thing would go into play. Well, that is not the case. There is a whole nother portal that goes into... it is I'm blanking on the name.
Think about how many people filed for this waiver though, like 4, 5, right? It's probably the least used portal that the FAA has.
Probably, yeah.
Which is saying something.
Yeah. But it was like waivers for all important, like, what sporting event was one of them. If I were to pull it up, I could show you. But, it was in conjunction with who mans the airports? Who's the
air traffic control?
No, like who's like checking your bags and stuff?
TSA?
Yes, it was TSA. Really? Yes, it was like
now they're getting involved in drone flying.
No, I don't think it had to do with like I don't know.
Yeah.
It all I know is it was like a TSA FAA, like it was a weird thing.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you had to take your airspace waiver, and then you had to submit a new waiver for the sporting event and attach that airspace waiver.
So like when you went into it, like what was your plan in terms of like media capture, like what were you going for? Like, did you have a plan in your mind? Did the MLB ask you? They were like, you know, we need these specific photos. Or did they give you complete creative control?
No, it was complete creative control.
That's nice.
And it was all videos, so they didn't ask for photos.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
well, you of course did a hyperlapse, right?
Yeah, I did.
So like, he is like the king of hyperlapses across the country. I mean, you've got great ones from Vegas to Miami to Philly. So again, I mean, huge shout out to your Instagram, because that's where you post most of these hyperlapses at. And the one that you got was so cool, of just everything going on in the stadium.
Yes.
You know, like.
And I wish I still did that. Like, if I were to do it all over again, just like when you go on other shoots and you see the footage, like, I would have done things differently.
Yeah. But dude, this is the first time it's ever been done. Yeah. You also had a lot of heavy restrictions, like not being able to fly in certain areas. Yes. I mean, really, I think some of the best shots probably would have come from the outfield. But you of course wouldn't be able to fly out there, you know?
Yes. So that was I was pretty bummed when I heard that, like, we only had between the one light and the other light, because I thought the view looking into, you know, this, because there's that opening in the outfield.
Yes, yeah.
That view would have been super cool. But,
totally.
Yes.
Even if you could fly further back, like getting a shot of the entire stadium with the skyline in the background would have been awesome. Yeah. But if you could only stay over the roof, you're kind of limited.
Yeah, and there was some, like, since I took off, like, technically not over the roof, like, I have one photo that almost has the whole stadium. Yeah. Because I got so high. So the other thing was I got approval for 400, which.
I think that area is usually
I've never gotten that before, so it was a nice, the FAA, you know,
they took care of you,
hooked us up.
So the one shot that you sent me was epic. The fireworks going off on top of the roof.
Yes, that was. So there was like a few planned, like, so when I say they gave me free creative, they did, but there was also so I guess to preferences is there was more restrictions than just the flight path in between the lights. So
when you could fly, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I couldn't fly during actual gameplay.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you know, going into it, you know, when us and the Phillies and I were talking, it was, you know, we were like, when Bryce Harper's up or Schwarber's up, like, we need to be in the air. Yes. We're like, yeah, because like if they hit a home run and, you know, blah, 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 we want to capture the stadium.
Going nuts.
Yeah. And the MLB shut that down.
So I guess what is the restriction there? It's just that they don't want, of course they have the rights to the game being played.
Though, to be fair and to their credit, and listen, I'm not a pitcher in the MLB or a player like on the field, so I'm not sure how much distractions there are. But like, if I'm right over the roof, let's just call it, and you know, your buddy took a photo, or somebody took a photo of it that was in the outfield, like, you can clearly see it. Yeah. So I don't think the MLB wanted any distractions. Now, you know, where my mind goes with that is like, well, there's helicopters flying around, and there's, you know, like how much, but again, I think it was the first really time that they allowed this, and it was like, let's see, you know, how this goes and maybe what we could do differently or whatever. So we did have a creative plan. It was, you know, the national anthem, God Bless America, and the 7th inning stretch, I believe.
Gotcha. And just little things in between, obviously, right? Like anytime that the players
Meek Mill, so Meek Mill.
Oh, yeah.
I don't, you know, nobody knew about that was happening.
Yeah.
But, Meek Mill, so we captured that. And with like the national anthem, and then also like announcing the starting lineup. So like we literally it was like, all right, we're going to stay in the air until like Schwarber's walking to the plate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, because then it's like, okay, the gameplay is playing. And right when we land, I don't know if you remember, he hit a home run.
Yeah. There's a leadoff homer. I mean,
there's a leadoff homer. So, dude, when I tell you I land and like within 2 minutes, the stadium's going nuts, I'm like.
So I ended up going to the game, and I passed by him, and from there, like after talking baseball now, after that hit, I mean, I thought they were winning that game.
Me too. Yeah.
You know, leadoff homer just totally gets the crowd into it, totally gets the players into it. I can understand like the distraction piece of it, and I think it's just something that players would need to be familiar with after a while. You know what I mean? Because it's like, if they understand a drone's going to be in the air, it's just, oh, whatever, it's there.
Yeah.
But now, with kind of like the bad rap that drones have, it kind of sucks because when drones come in and they like land on the field, they get the players off. Like they clear the field out of safety reasons, which is really a shame.
Yeah.
Talking a little bit specifically though, like I know that some of DJI's enterprise drones have a discrete mode where all the lights turn off on the drone. Like there's no lights on the drone whatsoever. So imagine that. Imagine being able to use that technology so even the red lights and the green lights are off. I mean, if you're filming at any time, nighttime or daytime, that is now less visible. And I mean, the noise, the crowd is going to drown out the noise of the drone, right? So there's really no room for distractions at that point. So
yeah, and I think too, like if you look at the footage, like I'm not hating on like the blimp views or anything like that, but like in game, like during like a broadcast, like if you look at our footage, like I don't see how like, you know, the broadcast team or even like teams themselves start paying for this.
Yeah,
it's like
it's huge.
It's so much better. I mean, you're so much closer. Like I could see people waving towels.
Yeah.
And like having that whole stadium in view too. So like on screen when you're watching a game, you know, sometimes mid-inning or whatever, they'll cut out to like a blimp shot or I think actually,
which is like so high up that you just see the parking lot.
Yeah, and actually I think the Phillies, it was an airplane. It was an airplane shot. Yeah, because we were looking for the blimp and we're like, we don't see anything.
Yeah.
So I guess Fox hired an air, and like not to, but like going like how much money does that cost?
Oh yeah.
How much money is it costing to fly a plane
for that one shot that they get?
Yes,
they could cut
every inning.
They could cut to the drone so many times mid-game. I mean, really, you know, that's kind of what I wanted to wrap this up with is like, can you see drones being used in the future in these situations?
Hope.
Right?
I mean, I'm hoping because one, I think the technology is there where, you know, people aren't worried about a drone falling out of the sky anymore. I mean, I think
the technology in the drones has gotten so good that it's not even really a risk anymore. And to that point, there's systems in place where you could have a parachute system.
Exactly.
On the drone,
like if there was a requirement by the FAA or whatever that was like, hey, listen, like if we're going to start doing more of these drone type of shots over open air assembly, you need a parachute, you need this, you need that, like,
and hopefully with that they give you more freedom. Like you can fly around just the outside of the stadium. You can fly in the outfield and stuff like that.
I mean, the other thing was too, like I don't know, I think it was an NFL game or something, but that Skycam,
the Walmart 4K Skycam.
Yeah, the Walmart Skycam, like that, one of them broke and disconnected and you know delayed the game for how long now. That's probably the only time that happened. I'm not sure. But in general, like getting that type of footage. And again, like I wasn't even flying over the stadium, you know? So like, it wasn't like I wasn't flying. I didn't have a waiver to fly over people. Like, so I was over the roof, but like getting those types of shots. And when, you know, the technology starts to become there where you can punch, you know, the Mavic 3 has that zoom capability and it, you know, the quality isn't there yet, but I'm imagining it's going to be there soon. Yeah. So like when you start talking about, you know, sports teams using this technology more, like I don't see how you can't. I really don't. Like,
and it comes down to like you wonder what technology they'd use, because when you think about, you know, the different drones available, you could use a much larger platform like what FreeFly makes, like the Alta drones. But now you're talking about something that's much louder, that's much heavier, that could be much more dangerous. So I feel like, you know, if this is going to be used in the future, you've got to kind of figure out that perfect sweet spot to where the camera quality is going to be great, because it's already there. But of course, if you used a broadcast camera, you'd have much more of like a zoom capability. So really, you know, I think that the technology is there, but these drones aren't currently being developed for broadcast, like with that in mind. You know, I mean, the 7x zoom on the Mavic 3 is just way too far. Like it's uncontrollable. You know? But yeah, and also I'm sure like the back end with software, it's even hard to, you know, like it's even hard to live stream on these drones now. So they would need a way to interface with their system and all of that stuff. But that is going to be so cool when that happens, because I can imagine like 6 drones in the air, like during a MLB game.
I mean, like I don't see why they wouldn't. You know, like
Yeah.
instead of like all these other different types of cameras or flying a plane or a blimp or
Cheaper, safer,
Yeah.
more cost effective, better shots, better overall result.
yeah, there's a lot more you can do with it. You know,
Let's see. I don't know if I had any more. I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to discuss in regards to this whole entire flight. I guess, are you going back? Are they going to have you back, do you think?
yeah, I think so. I think, you know, this was kind of our trial run.
Yeah.
And you know, seeing like what we could get and what the MLB was okay with. And like, again, I don't know if it would be different. Like, this was the World Series, right? So this is the biggest game in baseball as there is. Like,
Yeah.
if it's like, hey, we want you for the Phillies opening day, like, is there different, you know, approvals, or is it less restrictive? Like, I'm not sure.
It'd be nice if it is.
Yeah,
For you, right?
Yeah, I know. So yeah, though we talked about potentially, you know, coming back for they like the footage, and
Yeah.
we're hoping to be back with them.
Hopefully it opens up the door for like Eagles too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they probably saw that and were like licking their chops. They're like,
Yeah,
"We need this."
the Eagles definitely. That's an even easier stadium, I would say.
Totally, yeah.
To film.
I think that football in general would just be easier to film, like the way that the stadium's shaped, stuff like that. Something I sent you on Instagram the other day, the PLL's doing a lot of it. The Premier Lacrosse League, they're much smaller. Like, they have really small events, so there's no TFR put into place. And I think that their own, like, social media, marketing, content team, whatever, actually flies the drones over the stadiums during the games, which are really cool. And they're flying it directly over the players. I don't know
that's
what...
like, I was a little, I guess.
I mean, the players are probably like, yeah, it's cool. Like, it's probably in their contract. Like, they sign, you know what I mean? Like, you could fly a drone overhead, whatever. But regardless, like, the stuff they're doing is really cool. And it's nice that they can kind of do an experiment with it, because they're just like a smaller league. So it's kind of another experiment in this whole using drones for broadcast thing. So
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm actually flying the Eagles tailgate. I didn't get the game.
Oh, really?
Flying
The tailgate will be cool. That'll probably get more action here.
A lot less restriction.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to.
You're doing it this Sunday? Yeah. Because the tailgate, I mean, there's planes flying over like crazy. That's probably something you have to watch out for. Too. Like banner planes and helicopters and all that stuff. I look on Flight Radar 24 and I see these helicopters make like 100 circles around the stadium.
Well, look, I was looking at that.
Yeah.
The game before, I'm like, damn, there's gonna be a lot of.
Yes.
I was nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I was, you know, flying over that.
Look, again, first time it's ever been done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It was nerve-wracking.
So look, huge thanks to Brett for sitting down with me talking about this. Again, this is such an interesting topic. If you want to check out more from him, please check out his hyperlapses on Instagram at Elevated Angles. Do you have more affiliates content you're going to post?
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
They lost, and like, I was just so I had to throw one out as like a thank you.
Yes.
But I feel like I'm done.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
It's totally sour after they lost. But
maybe opening day.
Yeah, I mean,
opening day. Next year,
or Throwback Thursday.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.